Servus and welcome to another episode of the Pro Hockey Pod, episode 73. Continuing along with our coaching series, and funny enough, continuing along with another Burlington guy. I mean, I've said it multiple times on this podcast in the past couple weeks. It seems the teams that have success in the coaching world, especially whether it's USports, NCAA, they got someone from Burlington on their staff. So I'm just going to continue running with that theme, and this week is no different. This guy's a year younger than me. We grew up together. A couple call ups here and there with my team, and then funny enough, we took our talents to the LTD softball team in the summers, and this guy was on the mound every night, striking out batters for us, and has gone a long way up the coaching ranks now at University of Brock. Happy to have him on, as I mentioned, another Burlington guy, Rob Bentivegna.
Yeah, thanks, Hersey, for having me. I love that you brought up the LTD softball team. We were probably punching above our weight class there a little bit, but having you in the two slot there behind T, smacking a single out to start, usually got us off to a good start.
Yeah, we played. I think I played 3 or 4 years there. Two home runs in my career, and I have to say the two came in the same game, and I felt so big league when I actually hit them out, like I was in the bigs in the MLB. But yeah, there was some fun memories. A good way to kind of get a break from hockey there in the summers. Um, on this podcast, we always start from the beginning. I like to take it back. So I believe you were born in Burlington, Ontario. There, like, kind of, what's your first memory of growing up there? And obviously, someone like yourself who had an older brother in hockey, I'm assuming he had a big influence on you getting involved in hockey as well.
Yeah, so before we start with the hockey, you probably mentioned that the home runs were probably in the small park, not the
Max.
big one. But the two more home runs than I got. So credit where it's due. But yeah, no, grew up in Burlington. My first memories of minor hockey is Timbits with some of my buddies that I'm still friends with today. We were playing at Skyway Arena, and I know Dovey mentioned Kiwanis Arena with no glass there. They had the cage as the glass. It was pretty much chain link fence. And I think what our generation remembers is just the smallest dressing rooms known to man, where you would get a practice, and even at 7, 8 years old, you had a tough time fitting in those two rooms that you were assigned to. And my other memory is just 6 a.m. practices and waking up at 4:30 in the morning and having my bag downstairs. Mom and dad put the TV on with cartoons, and it was up to me to dress myself and let them know when I was ready. And we'd try to get to the rink around 5:15, because back then the ice was free and they would let you go on as long as you wanted, and you could stay on as long as you wanted after. And I was really fortunate. My dad was self-employed at the time, and he was able to kind of stick around and let us fart around. There was three or four of us that went to the same school, so those days we were always pretty late rolling into class and probably smelling like hockey still too. But that was the best memories for me.
So you're one of those guys that got up early, because I would say majority of guys, if they had a 6 a.m. practice, they were waking up as late as possible, like 5:45, rolling in at 5:55 and just rushing to get the gear on. It's funny you bring up the dressing rooms, man, because I remember it like it was yesterday. Like, as a goalie, you walk around the corner to the door and you poke your head in, and you see the guys look at you like, not in here, like, not this
Yeah.
one, and like, go to the next
Other
one.
room.
Yeah. So it's just like, you're just like, oh man, but you're right. The rooms were so small there. As I mentioned, your brother, like, I don't know him that well, but I do remember him, especially like from his days at Cougars. Like, we were obviously a couple years younger, and we would go to the games at Central, and obviously your brother played there a long time. Maybe talk about just kind of the influence he had on you, kind of getting in the game and growing up with an older guy like that.
Yeah, I think anyone with an older brother, like, it's huge. He wore number 14, so I wanted to wear number 14, and then he switched to number 11, and I was like, okay, I'm switching to number 11. Um, he went and played junior B in Thorold after the Cougars because he was going to school at Brock. Well, guess where I wanted to play? It was junior B in Thorold, and we were fortunate enough that we got to play 1 year of junior B lacrosse together as well. But just being able to watch him and Logan Peltzer, his older brother Tyler, played on the same team. So it was really cool to be able to watch our older brothers. We played on the same team and kind of do everything together. But watching him and being an undersized guy who I think in my recollection, he was pretty tough for his size. By no means was he a heavyweight, but he had no problem getting in kind of a fight a year, and I think that's what kept him in the junior ranks because he wasn't the fastest, he wasn't much of a scorer, but they called him the meatball because he was short and stocky, and he would win faceoffs and get in the corners, and I guess I tried to play like him as much as I could.
He definitely like had a good work ethic too, and you brought up such a good point. Like guys like him or yourself who, are undersized and may not have the weight and everything the other guys have, like you have to find a way to stand out. So even if you're a goal scorer these days, like you got to be able to, to go to the corners, handle yourself physically. And yeah, I do remember your brother. I think one of the games I was at actually at Central, he ended up fighting, and it's funny, right? Like a guy that size, you're like, oh, he would never drop the gloves, and he took on someone
Yeah.
bigger than him and held his own. So, obviously, props to him for that. Back to your career, as I talked about, like you grew up in Burlington, so obviously you grew up playing in the Burlington Eagles system there. I just remember some of the guys you had on your teams, like obviously guys that we grew up with, obviously played on the softball as well. But guys that come to mind are obviously like Schwartzy, Fleming, Gibby, and Bryce O'Hagan, and that they're like. I brought this up on podcasts before, like guys like that who you knew were going to have a future in hockey. Like you guys had a good team, like our older group, we had a good team too. Like it seemed like Burlington for years there was just like producing every year strong AAA hockey teams.
Yeah, we had a great group of guys. I played AAA all the way through minus 2 years of AA. Ironically, as an undersized guy, as soon as contact came in, I got the snips down to the AA team, and I remember that being like one of the most devastating pieces of news that I had gotten at that time in my life. And the way that we used to, I don't know if you remember this, but we used to you'd get a letter in the mail and you'd open it up and you basically skip all the writing and just go down to the part in pen. And you just wanted to see how many A's were there. And I remember looking and seeing that there was only two A's. And my first thought was like, oh, there's got to be a mistake here. Like they forgot to put an A. And I just remember it wasn't so much like, oh, I'm not going to be playing AAA at the highest level anymore. My biggest thought was like, man, I'm not going to be able to hang out with my friends anymore. Like I'm going to ask them to hang out and they're going to have hockey or vice versa. And it was actually one of our friends' parents who was the coach, one of the dads. And I remember like telling my mom, like, hey, like get this guy on the phone, like make a call, get me back on this team, not realizing that like it doesn't work that way. But those were two of the best years for my development was going down and playing AA and being one of the go-to guys. And I ended up being back on the AAA team. And like I said, a bunch of those guys, Flem, Swartzy, Gibby, like they're some of my best friends. They were in my wedding. I'm going to be in their weddings. And it's just, they're friends for life. And I think most of our minor midget team, everybody except for maybe two guys, ended up playing some sort of junior hockey, which was pretty impressive as well.
Two things I want to comment on there. First one, mom, not the best agent. She didn't pick up the phone and, and
No,
negotiate a
no.
better deal.
Yeah, that's
Um,
probably why I didn't go further after that too.
I do remember, like, when I moved to Burlington, I was turning 12, and I remember that because that was like new to me. And like, you did this the spring training, spring tryouts, and then you would get a letter, and that would make you go to the next one. And then if you were like, for example, if you were double A, you had a chance to either go up or down. If you're triple A, you could only go down to double A, like you couldn't do two levels. So I remember my first time too. I got a double A letter, and I was kind of like, well, I play triple A in Peterborough. Like this is weird. And
Yeah,
then obviously, Juris's dad helped me out there, bringing me to the triple A camp, and the rest is history. But
better
yeah.
agent than me.
Yeah, yeah, seriously, I hired the right guy. Um, One other thing I wanted to talk about that I think is cool that we got to do is we had that historic tournament in every midget year there, the Golden Horseshoe. I brought it up to Dovey because I remember, me and him were 2 years apart, so we always were in the tournament at the same time, just with different teams, and him scoring against his team scoring against Waterloo the one year when we won and that. But do you have any Golden Horseshoe memories that you can think of?
Yeah. So the first one was kind of right in novice because it was always the major year and the AAA. So I didn't get to play in the Adam one because our team actually skipped Adam because of the age group change when they brought in minor midget. We went from minor Adam right to minor Pee Wee. which is probably good for me because I would have been on double A then anyways. But my first memory is playing at Mainway Arena, and Chris Chelios was in the NHL, and we were playing against Little Caesars, and his son was on the team. He's a 91 born as well. And I just remember there was a lot of buzz of like, oh man, Chris Chelios, NHL player, Detroit Red Wings, like he's probably going to be here. And we're too young to realize like, no, he's got an NHL schedule. Like he's probably on the road somewhere. And then fast forward to Bantam, the horseshoe kind of dipped a little bit, and we actually only had 4 teams in our Bantam AAA year in the tournament. And thankfully, 2 of the 4 we made it to the finals, but we lost to Cambridge. They had Ryan Ellis. They had, I believe his name was Taylor Doherty, big, tall, right-handed defenseman, and then the goaltender Brandon Maxwell, who this guy at Bantam Hockey could shoot a puck better than me for sure, but better than half our team. He was making breakout passes, which we had never seen before. And then my other memory is we lost to them. And then my first year in midget playing with guys your age, the John Gibsons, the Ethan Lyons, Taylor Sykes. We had a wagon of a team that year, undefeated all the way through. We won the preseason tournament. We won the Big Nickel. And then all of a sudden we get to the horseshoe tournament. We're undefeated. We haven't lost a game all year. We meet the Hamilton Reps in the finals, and they beat us in overtime. And that was pretty devastating. So I never got to win the horseshoe tournament, but I have some great memories and helping out and volunteering there while I was in minor hockey and coaching it as well as I was coaching in Oakville. But those are my memories of the tournament.
I remember that year too, because I think you played with Juris that year, the one year midget, and
Yeah,
you guys had that. I think you went to Kelowna too or something and had a
yeah,
tournament there. I just remember him coming to high school one day and he had that the mohawk and it was like the cotton blue or whatever, like all the colors, and I was
yeah,
like, oh man, that's sick. But no, that's cool. Like some cool memories there. One thing you brought up, which I thought was obviously very beneficial to kind of go back to, is like when you mentioned the years when you got cut to double A. As a young kid, that's obviously, it's hard because you're not going to be with your friends. You spend a lot of time with these guys outside of school and on the hockey team, they're like your brothers. But you mentioned it actually probably ended up being better for your development. And this is a topic that I've had so many times on this podcast, and maybe you can reiterate it, but sometimes we have to take either a step back or not make a jump to a higher level if it means we can develop at the level we're at or go down a level to get more ice time, play different situations, stuff like that. So maybe you can kind of touch on your thoughts on that topic.
yeah. I mean, I was way too young to realize that at the time. Like again, minor Adam, you're talking that's probably like U8, U9 now. And I actually remember having a terrible attitude going to the first couple skates, thinking like, man, I'm gonna torch this league up. I'm gonna get a hat trick a game. To the point where one of our coaches was like to a 9-year-old, he was like, "Hey man, like I'll send you down to single A. Like I don't care. Like this is where you are. You better start like acting like it." And again, at the time, I probably didn't like it, but it was a message that needed to be said, and it is important, especially being somewhere where you're gonna be able to flourish. And I think the Detroit Red Wings did this better than anybody in the early 2000s. Was just like making sure guys were dominating at the level that they were at before they brought them up. And obviously, it's easier said than done. And at the NHL level, they've got millions of dollars invested in these guys. But minor hockey's it's no different. Like I hear it all the time through running some skates and working with minor hockey teams. Like a player gets cut and the parents are just they're calling the next AAA organization because they can't handle the idea of their kid playing double A. And for me, like you said, it was great to be able to build my confidence. I was actually able to deke some guys out and skate around and have the puck a little bit more and be on the ice when we were down a goal or up a goal and be relied on in certain situations and tournaments. And I'm a big believer in minor hockey of rolling lines. I don't think you need to shorten the bench, but there are certain times in tournaments you get down to the last 4 or 5 minutes of a game and it's the semifinals. Yeah, you maybe do want to put some guys out there that have shown a little bit more ability to put the puck in the net if you're down a goal. And because at the end of the day, if you guys lose that game, like the tournament's over. So why not try to, in an elimination game in the last 5 minutes? I'm not saying do this from puck drop, but in the last 5 minutes, I think it's okay to lean on some guys to help extend a season or extend a tournament.
I think that's just being competitive athletes. At the end of the day, there's situations where that competitiveness comes out and it is trying to win. And especially in minor hockey, like, not everyone's a skill guy, and there are guys that go out there and, run around, hit guys, get pucks deep, like give the team energy. Like that's their role. And as you said, sometimes the parents maybe don't have the right view of that, or they see more in their son or daughter, which is, hey, that's great, have confidence in them. But the reality is at times that, they might be in a role that they should be in, or they might not be good enough to play a certain level, but it doesn't mean that they can't develop at the level they're at. So I always try to recommend that to listeners out there. And it's obviously too not a race. Like there's always, as minor hockey athletes go, like the AAA kids will get all the looks at first. That's when the OHL will come on them, stuff like that. But it doesn't mean that, if you don't get drafted, you're not going to go anywhere in hockey. It doesn't mean you can't go there after. So, kind of speaking of that, like I know you played 2 years in midget there. And then you ended up making the jump to junior C there, the Dundas Blues. I remember watching some games back in the day there in that old arena. But had you ever given thought about the OHL route, maybe got to camps or everything? Like I know you mentioned, like obviously you were smaller and stuff like that, but did you ever, like we grew up with that, that was our focus. Like we in the GTA, there were so many teams within reach that you could go watch games. Like had you ever thought about that route, or was it just kind of you were kind of following the path that you were on?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely thought about it. I think in the back of my mind, knew that was never going to be an option for me. Like, I just knew I wasn't good enough. I was fine to be a support player on a minor midget AAA team, but um, like when draft day came around, like I was watching to see which of my teammates' names were going to pop up on that screen. Like, there's obviously that thought in the back of your head, like, oh, we're in the double digit rounds, like maybe my name will pop up in the 14th or 15th round somewhere. But to be honest, that wasn't really at the front of my mind. I knew that I was probably going to end up playing major midget hockey for 1 or 2 years, and probably finishing my playing career if I was lucky enough to make it to 20, based on my size and just my hockey playing ability. Like I look back at it now, and I know that I wasn't a great player. I probably thought I was a lot better at the time, but I always worked hard, and I felt that I was a really good teammate and a glue guy and a guy that my teammates liked having around. But as far as the OHL went, that wasn't something that was kind of at the front of my mind. I actually remember watching the OHL draft like at Brett Fleming's house, because I knew he was going to be someone that was picked earlier, and I wanted to just he's my best friend, and I just wanted to be there to support him and celebrate his success. So no, the OHL was never something that really crossed my mind. Obviously, you think about it because you're in minor midget AAA and you know the tournaments and the scouts and all that stuff, but I just knew that wasn't going to be in my cards.
Sometimes too, also like, we all want to get selected. I think as a whatever we are, 16-year-old, you want that, but it actually ends up benefiting you if you don't at times, because if you mention like, yeah, you get to those later rounds, it'd be cool to see your name, but at the same time, then one team owns you versus having 19 other options, kind of thing. I remember when I was getting drafted, I think somebody called me from Barrie and was like, "Hey, we would take you in the 12th round. Would that interest you?" And they had taken Michael Hutchinson in like the third round, and I was like, "Hey, I'll never play over him." So I was like, "No, I'm good." And then the next year, and I went to two camps, and it was good experiences. So, back to you. You obviously made the jump there, as I mentioned. You went to junior C there with the Dundas Blues, and then, as you mentioned before, followed in your brother's footsteps there to the Thorold Blackhawks, I believe, playing 2 years there. Um, how was that experience for you? And were you also kind of doing what your brother was doing? Like, were you taking classes on the side, or were you just kind of focusing on hockey, seeing what would come of it?
Yeah, I was, I'll put in air quotes, taking classes. That was the excuse that I gave my parents to allow me come live out in Thorold and play hockey. I ended up kind of finagling my way through the classes there. And I remember halfway through my 19-year-old year, my mom was like, "Okay, what are we doing with this school and hockey stuff?" And we had a very honest conversation. I said, "Listen, I understand that I have 2 years of hockey left, and I don't really want to exert more energy on the school side. I want to be able to put everything I have into hockey, but I made a promise to her that as soon as I was done hockey, I would get into school right away and put my nose in the books and get a degree of some sort and figure that side of it out." And she kind of, for whatever reason, was like, "Okay, if you can promise me that you'll get that part of your life done, then you can kind of put your focus into hockey." But for me, it wasn't like putting the focus into hockey to try to get to a Division 3 school or Division 1 school. Like, going back to my minor midget stuff, like I knew that wasn't in the cards for me. And pretty early in my 20-year-old year, I was like, you know what, I kind of like the coaching side of things. I was pretty tight with my coach in Thorold, Chris Johnstone. And I would have kind of one-on-one meetings with him. I was relied on for penalty kill and kind of shut down role. And we would talk a lot about that. And I would kind of look at him mid-game sometimes, and I look back at this and it's crazy, but I'd be like, "Hey, what do you think about like us doing this?" And now if a player said that to me, I'd be like, "Hey, like, why don't we just focus on playing the game and I'll do the coaching?" But I guess it was in my blood early.
Hey man, it's good to like to be honest, like just kind of hearing your story about it. Like you had a real honest reflection of you as a player and what maybe the max would be, and not to say that that's not a good thing. Like, you knew, hey, I got these 2 years of junior B. I'm gonna play. I'm gonna enjoy them, kind of live them out, and then after maybe there's a future for me in coaching. And it seemed like you had an interest in it right away, as you mentioned. And in saying that, you end up starting your coaching there with the U18 AAA Oakville Rangers, I believe. Like, now being on the other side of it, like how was that adjustment? And it must have been a good kind of introduction for you as well to, dealing with young players as a coach, maybe talking with junior teams about guys that they could sign the next year, OHL, and obviously the parent factor as well. So you maybe talk about that transition there.
Yeah, the U18 Oakville is like we had such a good time. My brother was actually the head coach there. So he's the one that got me into all the coaching. I was kind of missing that competitive fire of being on a bench. I was working at the Wave, being an instructor for full time for 5 or 6 years before I actually started coaching. And I just missed that in game situation, that feeling of when your team scores or that intermission on the bench, whatever it is, just the whole aspect of it all. I miss that, that sense of team. I really enjoyed doing the instructor thing and giving back and being able to make some money doing that as a full-time job. But I did miss the coaching side of things. It was weird going to Oakville though, because I grew up playing in Burlington, and I played all the way from senior mites all the way to 2 years of major midget. And then all of a sudden I'm on the Oakville side of the Burlington Oakville rivalry. But it was so much fun. I was 20, 21 or 22 years old. I'm coaching 17 and 18-year olds. I'm closer in age with them than I am with like some of the coaches. So that was a bit of an adjustment for me without really realizing it. Is like, you don't have to be buddies with the guys that you're coaching with, or coaching. Sorry, let me say that again. You don't have to be buddies with the guys that you're coaching. You just need to make sure that you have a good, honest relationship. And that took me a couple of years to figure out. But the U18 was so fun. We took over a great program from Mike Daly and his father there. They left it in great hands, or for us, and we were able to build off their success and have some really good teams and get to some OMHA finals and win the OMHAs, which was awesome. That's kind of where I first learned how to win and what it took. And my brother was a great motivator for the players, and I kind of did a little more of the X's and O's, and it was just a lot of fun.
Winning is always fun, so I think that that's always a cherry on top. You brought up kind of the wave when you were working there, and it kind of allows me to transition to the one part I thought was very interesting to talk to you about is, obviously when I was still playing professionally there, like, and we had a group, like it was me, it was Schwartzy, it was Flem, that Hutch, that all worked out together. And then, a lot of times they would do these skates with you, and you really, um, I felt, did such a good job at running these, whether it's skill skates or just putting the guys through drills in the summer to get them ready to go back for their seasons. And obviously, as I mentioned, guys that we were skating with are, some of them were in the NHL, some are playing AHL, some are playing high levels in Europe. Like, I remember too, I think you worked for BTNL there for a little bit, but like for someone like yourself that, obviously played until junior B there and then transitioned to like coaching. Like, how did you build up your reputation and kind of get your name out there to get these type of athletes? Because I'm sure there's a lot of maybe coaches out there who would love to do skill sessions like you did, but can't find a way to maybe build up their name to get the higher clientele and kind of get the recognition that you obviously need to have success in that type of business.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't really know, to be honest. I was really fortunate to work with Jarrett Reed at the Wave for so long. He was instrumental in teaching me how to teach on the ice. He had such a good demeanor. He's so knowledgeable as far as like the skating stride, and just spending so many hours on the ice with him definitely helped me. And then having the guys like Swartz, Flem, Hutch, and Juris and Locker at the time, like just having them put their trust in me to come out for the skates probably was a big part in that. Like they're putting their development and putting their time into somebody who didn't play any high level of hockey or doesn't have the resume that some of these other skills coaches had at the time. And I think a big part of it was I wasn't making much money from them. I was basically just charging them for the ice and not making anything for myself. But it was fun. It didn't feel like work. Like I'm out there with my buddies, and somehow got them to listen to me on a few things. And it was really cool. That was a really fun part of my life. And having those summer sessions on the ice where you guys would be up at Twist and then you'd come down and you'd come on the ice and we'd go through all these. There's different skates. Some days we'd be going through the stick handlers, and other days we'd be doing battle drills. And you'd always get Hutch in your ear asking, why are we doing this drill? What's this for? And we just have to tell Hutch, don't be the first one, because you got to go to the back of the line. Like you're going to mess it up. So let Flem go first, let Swartzy go second, and then you'll follow through and you'll figure out the drill by then.
I have to say, I was talking to somebody about this. It might have been Schwartzy. I can't remember who I was talking about recently. Was you see today, there's so many people that want to get involved in this, but it feels like they just go online, they Google a drill, and then they got their phone out the whole time filming it to get it on social media. And there's so many kids today, like you see it over here in Germany, instead of doing things that you would do in a game, hockey sense teaching drills or game situations, it's, yeah, let's stick handle here, and then let's do the Michigan to end it or something. Like it's just like it's crazy how it's changed. And one thing I respected about you was, yeah, you might not have had the playing resume, but you knew what you were talking about, and you got those guys to listen, even though they're like your friends, and they might give you a hard time at times. You could tell that they respected you enough to be like, hey, Benty knows what he's talking about, and they would relay that message to other guys who they might play with who are in the area and looking for a skate to be like, hey, one of our good buddies runs this skate. We do a lot of, whether it's skill things, but we also do a lot of game situation things. And you could see that every year the group stayed the same, and you would add in certain guys that would hear something. So I always had respect for you for doing that, because obviously what you were doing was working, because it just exploded, man. Like I remember all the time, it was like, oh, we got Benty, 2 times a week. You know what I mean? It wasn't even like it was a BTNL skate, but we all called it it's Benty skate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like or a twist skate, like it was you. So I always respect you for that, and that's why I wanted to ask you that question, because it's obviously there's listeners out there that might be like, yeah, like not sure if I want to get into coaching, but I've always wanted to be like a skills guy or a development guy. So it was cool to kind of hear your answer there. And as I said, you did a good job, man. So obviously a lot of guys are still playing. So I'm sure Schwartzy will give you some credit, even though maybe not publicly.
Yeah, no, I would say for people that want to get started in that is like go out and push pucks for someone for a little bit. Like if you're trying to get your name out there, just get out on the ice. You kind of got to do things for very little or no money. Like I said, like when these guys first started, I was just telling them like, hey guys, this is what the ice costs. You guys divide it up yourselves. Like I don't need anything for myself at the time. And usually at the end of the summer, those guys would come in and they'd flip me a couple bucks just because they're good guys. But it's not something that I was expecting or needed at the time. It was just I wanted to, like you said, get my name out there, and being able to say that I worked with those guys would help. And it was just being on the ice with my buddies and working on different little things. And for a while, I was the phone out camera guy, recording a little bit, but very quickly I was kind of self-reflecting and being like, what am I doing out here? I can't be coaching and filming at the same time. And it just that was something that didn't really work for me. I wasn't able to coach in the style that I wanted to if I was trying to record everything. And I made the conscious decision to say, hey, you know what? I don't need to get this stuff all online and build a brand. I probably could have made more money if I did, but for me, it was all about just the practice and being present there while I was there and helping the guys with the small details. And you can't do that if you're trying to catch everything on camera.
No, 100%. You got to focus your focus on the actual athletes and not holding the phone out and chasing guys around the ice for sure. But speaking of some of those athletes, just to kind of, we're going to step away here from hockey for a second. I had a fan question come in for you. You seem nervous, so it's don't worry, it's nothing too bad. But there was a story about you may or may not have been living at one guy's house during COVID there, and I believe he was out in the backyard doing some gardening of some sorts and some weeding, and uh, you were looking for something to do, maybe to help, and he was like, "Yeah, just go to the garage and grab the weeding tool there." And I guess the story goes, you came out with a shovel. And the guy asked you if you were planning on digging a grave or a hole or something in the backyard. So I just found that funny. Like the guy that brought it up said, obviously that wasn't your element because you came out with just like a full shovel and thought nothing of it. So
So two things can be true. One, that is not my element. I am not the gardener. I can mow a lawn with the best of them. I'll get the diagonal lines. I'll get the cross cut. I'll do the edging, but weeding is not in my DNA. I don't remember bringing out the shovel. That's something that's been brought up a few times over the past few summers. I would probably be more prone to just kind of standing around with my hands on the hips and being the supervisor than bringing out the shovel. But I won't call that man a liar. I'll just say that I misremember that part of the story.
I can neither confirm or deny that.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that was funny hearing that story, but yeah, I thought I'd throw it in there. But back to your coaching career there. So as you mentioned, you were at the Oakville Rangers there for a while, and then you ended up making the jump to where you also were the assistant coach there with the Blades, I believe, for a few years. So kind of following along with the hockey timeline or the way things go, you start in minor hockey, work your way up to tier two juniors. So um, had you always saw yourself eventually being a head coach down the road at maybe the tier two junior level? Like, had that been kind of something you thought about? Like, hey, if I start at the minor hockey level, then go up to the tier two junior level as an assistant, then I can maybe go somewhere as a head coach. Or is that kind of your short-term plan, I would say?
No, not at all. I had no plan. I was coaching. I was working at the Wave, coaching the Oakville Rangers AAA team. We did a great job of putting together some good teams and some good winning seasons, which then turned into players moving up to the Oakville Blades and some other OJ teams. And it was one kind of mid-August, might have been late August one year. I got a call basically saying, "Hey, we just lost an assistant coach. Like, do you want to coach with us?" And my first reaction was like, "Hey, I'm just not going to leave the U18 team. It's too close to the season. But if there's a way to do both, I would love to." And we ended up kind of coming up with an agreement where if there was any conflicts, I would go to the Blade stuff. And but I was able to do both. I really didn't miss a lot. I put a lot of miles on my car and spent a lot of hours at the rink, but I loved it. I loved being able to be a bit of a bridge connection from the U18 team to the junior A team. It only made both teams stronger. It helped recruiting for the U18 team, and then it helped me kind of pass on to the Blades coaching staff, like who I thought was the most ready. And we would always have group discussions on at the end of the day who would make the team, and they would have to do well in prospects camp and training camp and all that stuff. And like you said, it also helped me build connections with some other OJ coaches to say, hey, and it was kind of weird in some of these situations where it's like, hey, we're not taking this guy in Oakville, but you should really look at him with Juris for Burlington or some guys in Georgetown. And it's like, the first question is always like, well, why aren't they good enough for you? But it's like, hey, no, they are good enough to play in the league. We don't have enough room for all of them, or we don't want to take this many young guys. And but no, I never thought of it as like starting U18 and then move up to the OJ and then move up. I kind of was just always happy where I was, and ended up getting phone calls. And with the Blades, my first year, we were fortunate enough we won the OJ, we won the Dudley. We ended up making it to the national semifinals. Some of those players are still playing either Division One or in the American League, and it was just those 2 years doing both was a lot of time at the rink, but it was a lot of fun, and it really helped me get ingrained in the Oakville Rangers minor hockey system because I was with the U18s, I was with the Blades. We would have minor hockey teams. I was actually doing development for the Oakville Rangers at the same time, so I was seeing everybody from kind of U7, U8, all the way up to their 20-year-old year. And I really enjoyed being a part of that bigger community.
And one thing it brought you to was obviously your connection there with Mike Tarantino, who obviously after Oakville went to Collingwood there, and then kind of took where you ended up going as well. You ended up getting your first head coaching job in the league there in Collingwood, and obviously had built a connection or relationship with him where, he was a GM and wanted to bring you along with him. So maybe talk about those 2 years there. I believe you packed up and moved there, brought the family and everything, if I remember correctly. Like I always ask people because it is so much different. Like when you're an assistant to a head coach, like then everything, like you're in the spotlight, like all the decisions kind of come to you. So, how was it? How was it going to the head coaching stage? Did you feel ready? And maybe what are some things that you didn't expect to be worried about that kind of happened, or vice versa?
Yeah, the switch is definitely different. We had just to quickly go back to Oakville, we had an older gentleman on our coaching staff in U18. His name was Scott Lisco. He's now coaching U18 as well. But he had a great line that's always stuck with me, and it's assistant coaches make suggestions and head coaches make decisions. I did feel like I was ready. It was definitely it was an odd start because it was right during COVID. So the season prior had gotten shut down in March, and then I had been hired in Collingwood in April. So we were kind of working under the assumption that we were going to start. This COVID thing won't last very long. We'll be starting our hockey season in training camp in August, and everything will be normal again. And so we did. My girlfriend at the time, she's now my wife, we packed up, moved. We brought our dog up to Wasaga Beach, and we lived there. And we were running practices that were kind of, first you could only have 5 guys on the ice at a time. So we're running 3 or 4 sessions back to back to back to back, kind of skill sessions basically is what they were. And then we were slowly allowed to kind of ramp it up to 10 guys at a time. So we could do some, we weren't really allowed to do some battle drills, but we did. We had some guys competing, and that year, actually, we would have had a very strong team. We had some good 2000s, some 20-year-olds that had established themselves in the league, but we never ended up playing. We did this kind of little exhibition series with the Lindsay Muskies where we would drive through, and you'd play 2 20-minute games, and you had to have different rosters for each game, and you could only have certain guys on the bench. So it wasn't real hockey. which was unfortunate because I think that would have been we would have had a great start to my head coaching career. But it is what it is. We kind of put our focus into culture building, and a lot of our guys were billets, pretty much our whole team, because Collingwood didn't have a lot of local players. So everything those guys did, they did together. And but it was also hard because with COVID on, restaurants were closed and you can only sit with a certain amount of people at a time. And there was red zones and yellow zones and green zones, and different places had different rules. So that was probably my biggest challenge navigating, is figuring out through all the COVID stuff as a first time head coach, how to organize guys. And there was always just a different issue that came down from the municipal or the provincial government that, okay, now we got to pivot on what we had planned for next week. We got to do things a little different. And do we send the guys that are billeting, like, can they go home? We're trying to develop this culture of being hockey players, but we're not playing games. So there was just a lot to sort through to figure out. And I would say as a new head coach, that was my biggest struggle, was sorting through all the stuff that wasn't hockey, because that's the honest truth. When you're a head coach, like, about 20% of it is the actual hockey. The rest is managing everything else.
Mm-hmm. It's like man, it's still crazy to look back to say that we lived through that, and there was so many people like yourself, me included, where it abruptly ended a season. We all said, "Oh, like it'll be fine by next year," and then you had basically a year and a half, 2 years of shutdowns through the league. Like in the Del Two, we had teams get infected, so we had to sit out for 2 weeks. I did it 2 weeks back or two times back to back, so it's a month without playing hockey, being in quarantine. And then just like the unknown, like there have been so many people like yourself that would have, maybe taken a job opportunity. It doesn't matter if it's in sports or not. Like, and then all of a sudden it's, well, is this job still going to be there? Like, how's it going to look? And as you said, like you're jumping through hoops with the municipal government and all this and provincial, like just to put skates on, for Christ's sakes, not even a season. But yeah, like at the end of the day, it happened, and kind of allows me to transition. Like after your two years there in Collingwood of COVID years, I would say, you end up making the switch to U of T and USports there, working with last week's guest Andrew Dovey there, who obviously speaks very very highly of you. But how was it transitioning to the college ranks? Like obviously it's different than tier two junior. Maybe talk about like your first year, kind of what your responsibilities is day to day that would kind of go into it.
Yeah, so where the elite prospects is a little off is, I actually left Collingwood halfway through the second year. I ended up moving back home. It wasn't the right path for me to take anymore. It wasn't my journey to be on, and so I ended up moving back home. And it was actually, I had my whole SUV packed with all my stuff, and I was driving home, and I got a call from Dovey, and I'm like, oh, I wonder what he's calling me for. I haven't talked to him in a while, and um, I'm on the way home, pick up, and he's like, hey, we're looking for another coach in at U of T here, and we didn't really want to post it, and we've been kind of waiting for the right person, and I just saw you're not going to be in Collingwood anymore. Like, do you want to join us for the new year? And my initial thought was, you know what? No, I got to take some time. I got to reflect here and see what's going on. But give me a couple of days, I'll call you back. And it was actually my wife who, again, she was my girlfriend at the time, and we had a lot of conversations. And she kind of said, like, listen, if you think you want to do this coaching thing as a career, like, you go, you take this opportunity, you do it for the second semester, like it's 3 months, and then you figure it out from there. And I'm so glad she said that, because that's exactly what I did. I joined for basically for free for the next 3 months, and carpooled in with Doves every day as another Burlington guy. And my roles there were pretty easy. It was help out with the forwards, track face-offs, come up with some face-off plays, and support the staff however was necessary. But it was very easy for me to jump in. I had a good relationship with Dovey. There was actually 3 guys on that team that I had coached in U18 and another two that I had coached on the Blades. So as far as transitioning mid-season, I had never done that before. I had never been traded in junior. I had never done a mid-season switch, but having those familiar faces made it a lot easier, and it was a lot more comfortable for me. And I'm very glad I did that, because being at the U Sports level has been great. I love it. I hope I never have to leave, because it's just such a good balance of, it's really good hockey. There's a good balance of work and family life, and the travel's not too bad. So I'm very fortunate that that opportunity came across my phone, I guess I'll say.
Yeah, I actually like on Elite Prospects, it doesn't exactly say you left, but I saw that one guy went in as an intern. So I had wondered, okay, maybe something happened. Then when you were talking about the story, I actually remember hearing about it. And it's crazy, man. Like people, what are the chances that Dovey calls you that day and reaches out, and it obviously ended up being the right decision. And obviously very good that you had such a good support system at home that encouraged you to, if you wanted to be in coaching, that you might need to take this. And it obviously has led you to where you are at Brock right now. Um, you're now at Brock in your second season. I had your head coach on, TJ Ministerski, there a couple weeks ago. I joked with him, but kind of also serious at the same time. You get there last season. Coincidentally, a Burlington guy gets there, and you guys end up having the best season in program history. So I don't want to put one and one together, but I think it's pretty obvious why they had that year. But talk about, obviously working with someone like him. Like he's very known for going to programs, building them up. Talking to him about his experiences where there was at Curry. I didn't know he was at Union there for a year, and then obviously now at Brock. Like he really, one thing I liked about him was I asked him how he defines his teams and like maybe sets a culture there or a standard. And he said he really likes to include the players and also the community and be like, this is where we are. These are the players we have. What do you guys see are positive things we should do? How do you guys want to lead? How do you want to be remembered? How do you want the culture to be here? What's the, day to day look like? So how's it been working with kind of a guy like that I feel like has done a good job at, incorporating all these factors around Brock University?
Yeah, well, to go back to the secret sauce there of the Burlington guys, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our other assistant coach, Ryan Hunter. The 2 years that him and I have worked together actually was last year and my first year with the Blades. And we also set a program record for wins and got to the national tournament. So Hunt and I are 2 for 2 on setting program records and getting to national tournaments. So he's coaching in Italy now, in the Alps Academy, which I believe is a new academy out there. I would love, you should have him on. He's got some great stories. Another coach that has kind of went through the ranks and is now in Europe. So I will hook the two of you up. He'd be a great guest. But working with TJ has been great. He's taught me so much about the process of what it takes to get ready for a week of 2 games or a season and being prepared. He's got processes and templates for everything to make sure that everybody's kind of on track. We have set times in our schedule where, hey, this is where we're doing our pre-scale for our Friday opponent. This is when we're doing it for our Saturday opponent. And I think the guys in the room can see the preparedness. It's not like we're walking in and kind of figuring out what's going on the spot. We have a lot of staff meetings, but it's also great because he understands there is a home life to it as well. It's not just go, go, go all the time. As long as we communicate, which we do every single day, multiple times a day, he's been very easy to work for or work with, I guess I'll say.
Yeah, work with is probably the better better phrase there. Another thing, like you brought it up before, like how U Sports, like how far the hockey's coming. I've brought this up to other people from U Sports that I've had on. Like, I don't know if it was the same for you, but remembering like 10 years ago, where U Sports was in terms of hockey and like the reputation I'd say it had, like you wouldn't see many guys, maybe you saw like one guy like I remember Joel Ward who ended up going on having an NHL career from playing U Sports, but a lot of guys, it was like go there, play some hockey, get their degree, and then they were done. Where now you see so many guys moving on to pro hockey. I remember a goalie that went to Brock a couple of years ago that obviously went on to have a good career now as a real estate agent. I believe is Clint Windsor, who was there and went on to play. But one guy that came to mind, and I said it on another episode, was Austin Keating, who obviously went to University of Brunswick last year, and now he's in Ingolstadt. Came there as a guy to give a chance to, and now he's ended up extending 2 years. So it just shows like the how the hockey's come a long way. It obviously shows as well like coaches are putting a lot of time into developing these athletes. Was saying that now your pool's going to grow, right? So with the NCAA rules now, um, changing everything for major junior, it also is going to open up an opportunity for you guys in terms of recruiting because like of the maybe uncertainty with some guys now if they'll go D1 or not, and also the trickle down effect. Like there's going to be a lot of good players out there that maybe not wouldn't have considered U Sports before this, but now might be like, hey, maybe I'll go closer to home. Obviously the cost is way more beneficial in Canada than it would be to spending tons of money in the States, and maybe I would go U Sports instead of going D3. Like are you involved in recruiting at all? And like, how do you see that new rule kind of maybe affecting positively or negatively the U Sports hockey?
Yeah, I'm very involved in the recruiting. That's another area where TJ has helped me tremendously. I feel like I have gotten a lot better at it. I'm more comfortable with it. What I really enjoy is getting to know the potential recruits. Obviously, you talk to a lot more players than you get committed, whether they commit to other places or they end up going to play pro or it's just not the right fit. So getting to know these players and their paths and what they're looking for and what they want to get out of their experience really helps to define if it's going to be a good fit. Oftentimes there is a really good player where the connection's just not there, and at the end of the day, you got to spend a lot of time. Like I'm spending more time here at the rink with the players and the coaches than I am with my own wife and kids. So you want to make sure that you're bringing in good people and people that you want to spend every day with. Obviously, there's a hockey standard that needs to be met as well, but the culture side of things is something that we put a really big emphasis on because, like I said, you're spending so much time, and vice versa. They're spending more time with you than they are with their families, and they've got an education to figure out and finagle through, and while they're doing hockey. And I think one area that we've really kind of put our focus to is we do want the players that are still hungry to play pro hockey. Like a line that I use all the time is we want hockey players. We don't want guys that have just played hockey their whole life. So if you don't have that hunger, you're probably not going to be too successful or as successful as maybe some other guys. But the rule change for recruiting is it's going to take some time to see how the dust settles. I would say it hasn't really changed too many of our conversations so far. Obviously, the CHL players are a lot more open to the NCAA side of things, and they want to see what that looks like. But as far as my personal experience has gone, it hasn't really changed too much. I think at the end of the day, it'll probably slow down some players' commitments to U Sports, but I don't think it'll take it down to zero. I don't think our league will have zero CHL guys. I think we're like you talked about the US dollar to the Canadian dollar will have a factor. Players wanting to be maybe a little more localized, closer to home, may be a factor, and just opportunities to jump in and get their development and the schooling aspect, finding the right program. All these things matter, and it just like I said, has to be the right fit for the player, and sometimes that takes a while. You can't expect to talk to a player one day and talk in a month from then and be like, hey, so are you ready to commit now? And it takes time, which I've learned to enjoy that process.
Got to build that relationship. They obviously are committing, up to 5 years with you of their life, right? So they have to make sure it's a good fit. And just to the rule, like I'm very curious what happens. Like obviously, for CHL guys, the NCAA is like a shiny new toy. So everyone's fascinated with it. Everyone wants to go. You're seeing commitments every day, but maybe school isn't for some of these guys. Maybe, a lot of these schools can't give every athlete full rides. So then it becomes a cost thing. I think it'll affect D3 hockey if I'm speaking personally because, if you play D1 or if you had the option going D1 and it may not be there and you're a Canadian, then it's going to be okay. Well, I'll go to U Sports because it's 30,000 less or whatever it is,
Yeah.
right? Because that obviously D3 is expensive and there's no athletic scholarships there. But two more for you. We've been buzzing along here for almost about an hour, I believe. What's maybe like a personal goal of yours? Like, do you have some goal down the road you like to reach, or maybe somewhere you see yourself in 5 years, maybe a head coach in the U Sports? Like, I know you're happy where you are, you want to stay where you are. We talked about that off camera,
Yeah.
but obviously you as a coach, everyone has their own goals they hope to reach.
Yeah, yeah, I would love to have another crack at being a head coach. The U Sports level would be perfect as far as the balance of family and hockey goes. But for me, like you said, I am very happy where I am. I don't have too long of a commute. I work with great people every day. We have a great team, a great program. We have a brand new facility here that we have all the tools here to become and be a national contender every single year. But one thing that's maybe a little bit unique for me that I would like to do is I would actually like to get a little more involved with some minor hockey organizations, whether that's out in the Niagara region, or for me, what would be really ideal is getting more involved with the Burlington Eagles. I do some they have a program called the NLT, Next Level Training, where a couple coaches get assigned some teams and we work with their coaches. We go out to some practices. I have phone calls pretty often with the five teams that I'm assigned to. But I would love to get involved a little more on the organizational side of things. My dad was on the executive for the Burlington Eagles as I was growing up, and I know now they've kind of transferred on to some of the younger guys. You got Corey Locke is running the show there and doing a great job. You got Justin Howard, James Austin, all these guys that are really involved. Scott Mifsid's working with some of the younger groups there, and they're great people. And I always enjoy when I have my kind of one or two meetings a year with them and then work with the coaches. But I would love to get involved as some sort of a sounding board for the coaches in the organization, or help maybe be an unbiased eye for some tryout evaluations and see what the current issues in minor hockey are, and maybe just a new perspective and give some like I said, suggestions on how to maybe help the decision makers get to a decision. But staying, as far as coaching goes, staying in U Sports is a big goal of mine. I would love to be a head coach, but also get involved with the Burlington Minor Hockey Organization on an organizational level, and help maybe influence some decisions there.
Another Burlington guy possibly returning home, where their roots started, right? Like I think that's always great. Obviously, you mentioned some guys there like Austin there. Corbs is obviously involved too. Corey Locke, like
Yeah.
guys like that have gone back to the team they grew up playing for. So I always think that's a cool story. Last one for you here. Always like that on this one. I'm sure you've heard it if you watched a couple of the other episodes. What is one piece of advice or multiple pieces of advice you would give the younger generation out there? So someone like yourself that actually works with a lot of younger athletes over the course of your career in coaching, what is one piece of advice or multiple pieces of advice you would give them?
My number one thing would be stay involved in the game as long as you possibly can in whatever fashion you are able to do so. Like all of us as young kids, like everybody wants to play in the NHL. The reality is that's not in the cards for 99.9% of the population, but there's so many other ways to get involved in the game, whether it's coaching, it's reffing, it's being a stats person, it's hanging around a coach's office. Like we're lucky at Brock, we have a great sports management program. So we have students all the time that are taking analytics for us, or jumping in as video coaches and things like that. Playing intramurals, like just play as long as you can, whether it's beer league with your buddies or intramurals at school, or just renting ice and playing pickup. I think the sport gives so much to me personally, but to communities. You see minor hockey teams all around the world doing fundraisers. They're outside grocery stores. They're doing all these different things. Like, stay in the game as long as you can, because the game at some point, if you played in minor hockey, you either developed relationships or you developed life lessons, and to be able to pass that on. And when you see these kids outside the grocery store looking to collect a toonie for their tournament, like, pop the toonie in the box, have a conversation, ask them who their favorite team is. If you're a junior player, like, go help out minor hockey practices. These kids, to you, you are the NHL player. You are the guys that they look up to. And I still remember the Burlington Cougars going in the dressing room and asking for autographs. And when the house league rotation, when it was my turn to play goalie, the Burlington Cougars goalie came out and watched me at 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning. And now I'm sitting here realizing he was probably out the night before, and it was a struggle for him to get out. But for me, as that 8 or 9 year old goalie, like, that was the coolest thing ever. Like, the Burlington Cougar goalie actually came out to watch me and be a role model and just stay involved in the game as long as you possibly can.
Being a role model is so important. Like, you brought up so many great points, so many memories there. I remember as a kid, whether it was standing out front of Canadian Tire, or waiting to collect some change or anything like that. And yeah, like, simple gestures go a long way. And as you mentioned, a lot of these young athletes out there, like, it meant so much when the junior team came in and did something with you or just acknowledged you, because those were your kind of heroes growing up. I'm sure the goalie that came and watched you realized real quick that goaltending wasn't the route for you. So you
Yeah.
saved your parents a lot of money, which is probably good. But no, that's awesome, man. That was really good advice, and I'm happy that you're where you are now. You're obviously making an impact there at Brock University. As I mentioned, another Burlington guy that's done well in hockey, especially his coaching career. And two, that you're so committed to the younger generation and wanting to work with the youth and develop, because we need people like you that actually want to do it, actually put the effort in, versus just to say they got on the ice and did it, or maybe people over here that just collect a paycheck. So happy that's where your head's at. Happy you guys are having success there at Brock. Appreciate you doing this, especially on a game day. And we'll talk to you soon. And yeah, good luck tonight in the game.
Thanks. Yeah, the fire still burns for me. It's something I still enjoy coming to the rink every single day, and I hope we always say in this office, it beats working.
This is true. Not a job. But
Yeah.
thanks again, Benty. If anyone listening, if we're in the Brock area there, St. Catharines area, want to go see a game, I highly recommend it. I definitely have it on my bucket list if I ever get back in the next bit here during the season. And if you ever need coaching, skill development, you now know a guy that does it and doesn't just sit on his phone the whole session filming it. This guy actually knows the details, knows how to make guys better. So look Rob Bentivegna up. And until next week, cheers and ciao.